They're calling it a retribution for the attack that damaged a crucial bridge to the Crimean Peninsula in Russia. Now, Russia continues with a second night of air attacks on Ukraine's port city of Odessa, as well as raids on the capital, Kiev. The Ukrainian Air Force shot down, in fact, 6 Caliber cruise missiles and 31 out of 36 drones that were targeting the Black Sea port of Odessa. The Ukrainian authorities also released a body cam video that shows the aftermath of the Russian missile attacks. Several homes, as well as unspecified port infrastructure in Odessa, were damaged by these strikes. Now, this attack, remember, comes a day after Russia's pulled out of a UN-backed deal that had let Kiev safely ship its agricultural products to the global markets.
Ukrainian authorities released body cam video they say shows the aftermath of a Russian missile attack on Odessa, one of Ukraine's main ports for exporting grain, a day after Russia pulled out of a UN-backed deal that let Kyiv safely ship its agricultural products to global markets. Several homes were damaged by Russian strikes Tuesday, as well as unspecified port infrastructure in Odessa. That's according to Ukrainian officials, who also describe a serious fire at a port in Mykolaiv. Ukraine's Air Force said 6 Caliber cruise missiles and 31 out of 36 drones had been shot down, mostly over the coastal Odessa and Mykolaiv regions in the south. The Russian Defense Ministry said it hit fuel storage in Odessa, where the Ukrainian Navy has its headquarters, and a seaborne drone factory as part of mass revenge strikes in retaliation for Monday's attack on a key bridge linking Russia to Russian-occupied Crimea. Ukraine denied involvement in the bridge attack. Shortly after the bridge was hit on Monday, Moscow withdrew from the grain export deal, a move the United Nations said risked creating mass hunger. If Ukrainian grain is blocked from the market, prices could soar around the world, hitting the poorest countries hardest. Speaking at the Odessa port on Tuesday, Chief of the U.S. Agency for International Development, Samantha Power, announced $250 million in new funding for Ukraine's embattled farmers.
We will work to create and to expand alternative export routes for Ukrainian farmers.
Moscow rejected calls from Ukraine to allow shipping to resume without Russian participation, with the Kremlin openly saying ships entering the area without its guarantees would be in danger.
Now, joining me on this live stream today is Mr. Ruslan Botnik, who is the director of Ukrainian Institute of Politics. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this conversation, Mr. Botnik. I'd first like to understand the kind of response to the Russian attack that's come in from the Ukrainian side. What does one make of those responses, the denial, and also the fact that there is too much of an impact on the Ukrainian side after these attacks have continued for over 2 days?
Of course, the last night Russian attacks is very tightened with the grain export deal, which finished 2 days ago, because the Ukrainian government announced that Ukraine is going to continue this deal without Russia.
Yes.
Ukraine is going to continue this deal by taking the support from Turkey and other countries, or using the coast along the coast shipping way without the international seas, international waters. And Russia nowadays is trying to destroy Ukrainian port infrastructure, infrastructure for Ukrainian agricultural export. And so we saw that strikes on the Odessa, Mykolaiv, and other seaports, sea infrastructure. Russia tries to show that without Russia, this Ukrainian export and this grain deal is just impossible. Of course, we were waiting such type of response after the Crimea bridge attack. And unfortunately, for me, that this situation shows us that the peaceful negotiation or some kind of frozen this conflict for the nearest future is impossible. Only the military way is becoming the main way of resolving for this conflict.
Mr. Botnick, I would like to understand this aspect of how you're talking about Kiev that is part of this deal, which is backed by the United Nations so that it can safely ship its agricultural products into the global market. Now that Russia is pulled out of it, I'd want to understand the impact that it will have in further alienating Russia, considering United Nations is involved.
Of course, for Ukraine, it's very important this grain deal because we earn more than 10 billion United States dollars for the last year from this grain deal. But we should remember that this grain deal consists from the two parts. There is two deals, to be honest. The first deal is Ukraine, Turkey, United Nations, and the second deal is Russia, Turkey, and the United Nations. And we are trying to save this first part of this agreement with Ukraine, Turkey, and the United Nations. Of course, Ukraine will stand the question in the world about the Russian agricultural export. Russia is one of the biggest, or maybe even the biggest country in the world talking about the agricultural export. And if the Russia will not let us to make our agricultural export, we will stand the question about the new sanction way against Russian agricultural export also.